Trump is more blunt about his genocidal intent, whereas the Democrats beat around the bush? Or am I wrong? Is there a change that we might be seeing?
No, I think Trump is blunt in his total support to Netanyahu and Israel. And his previous term led to very serious problem where the whole issue of Palestine was being, liquidated by Netanyahu using Trump's plan, which was the deal, the so-called the deal of the century. And it led to what we see today. I mean, the deal of the century was the cause of what happened on the 7th of October, because Palestinians felt that Netanyahu with Trump were planning to totally liquidate the Palestinian issue. But let me start by saying that probably one of the reasons why Kamala Harris lost elections was the stance of Biden in supporting genocide. His whole administration was complicit with the genocide. They participated in the genocide. They attended so many meetings of the War Cabinet of Israel while genocide was being conducted in Gaza and later in Lebanon. So their position, the administration position, of course, was one of the factors why many people did not vote to Kamala Harris, since they felt that there is no difference really in terms of the policy regarding Palestinians.
Do you
Now,
think that this might affect how Trump continues, seeing the effect that he saw on Harris's campaign?
I doubt that. The problem is that he is supported by people and groups who have made conditions for their support to him to achieve certain things. In particular, our biggest way is that whether he has really made that promise to people like the Sheldon Adelson family that he will support the annexation of the West Bank or big parts of the West Bank, which would mean killing any potential or possibility for a Palestinian state. And the two main risks now, where Netanyahu will try to use Trump to achieve, is the possibility of annexing most of the Palestinian occupied territories of all of the occupied Palestinian territories and justify that. Or it would be the possibility that Netanyahu will proceed with ethnic cleansing, especially in Gaza, and then get Trump's support for that. These are the two major risks that we face today. If we analyze realistically what was declared and the kind of people who are with Trump, the kind of people who supported Trump.
So I'm quite surprised that since I last talked to you, war crimes have managed to become more cruel. Since I talked to you, we've had patients being burnt alive, still with their IV drips still in hand. We've seen children stuck in ambulance cars, and now we've seen the total disregard of human life in northern Gaza, where people are being eradicated. Kamal Adwan Hospital, the continuous bombardment on there. Where is the world, and how do you see this kind of complicity when it comes to efforts to de-escalate the situation?
Absolutely, that's the right question. What we see today is not only a terrible genocide and a combination of three war crimes, including genocide, collective punishment, and ethnic cleansing in Gaza, where 90% of the people have been displaced from their homes, where 7% of the population of Gaza are killed or injured. It's a huge number. I mean, if that had happened in the United States of America, you would be talking about 23 million people killed or injured in less than a year. I mean, just to give you an image of the scope of what's happening, I mean, 7% of the population, this is almost twice as much as France lost in the Second World War in 5 years. So there is no international law anymore. There is no international humanitarian law anymore. That is the main problem. And it is a challenge to the whole world, of course, because what we see today in North Gaza in particular is that the place is under siege for 32 days now. People are deprived of food, of water, of medical care. All hospitals are besieged. All ambulances are destroyed. Bombardment continues. If anybody is injured, that's a death sentence because there is no medical care that can reach him or her. And this is happening while the Israeli army is trying to push people out of their areas to conduct ethnic cleansing. The big question here is where is international law and international humanitarian law? Where is the United Nations ability to make people respect international law? Regardless of the fact that the ICJ is discussing genocide, and regardless of the fact that the Prosecutor General of the International Criminal Court demanded the arrest of Netanyahu and his Minister of Army, still the genocide continues. And instead of seeing real pressure on Israel, we keep seeing these attacks on Palestinians. And the question we have as Palestinians is, are we equal human rights or not? Are we treated as human beings or not? The whole world is going to face big troubles because now the conclusion that any dictator in the world would make or any power in the world would make that they have a free hand because there is no international law. If you have power, you can do whatever you like. And that's the outcome of this American policy. That's the outcome of what Biden did and what Trump could do if he proceeds with what he's planning to do.
The other thing that's really scary is that Israel kicked off this genocide by starting out these lies, and they've clearly been debunked. And one thing that was extremely scary was seeing, for example, the horror that's happening in Kamal Adwan Hospital. You're seeing women, you're seeing unarmed men, you're seeing the attack of doctors, you've been seeing the attack on journalists. Where is media? Because they no longer can hold up this facade because frankly, and I'm sorry to say, everyone who is continuing to justify is sounding very stupid.
Well, first of all, you have to understand that Israel did not allow any foreign journalist into Gaza, except one maybe for 3 hours with CNN, and they didn't know about her, and they forced her out. And since then, they've killed 186 Palestinian journalists. But not only journalists, 890 of my colleagues, doctors, nurses, and health professionals were killed also during this campaign. I know that atrocities have happened before in Algeria, they have happened before in Vietnam, they have happened before in South Africa, but we've never seen in our whole history a genocide being conducted in front of the eyes of everybody on social media. Social media defeated the Israeli effort to create a complete blackout about what's happening in Gaza. So people saw what's happening. Politicians know what's happening. I send them information every day. Every day I send to foreign journalists and to diplomats and to many members of parliaments worldwide images and information about what's happening in Gaza. But what we see here is, in response to that, what we see is lots of cowards who are afraid of even expressing their views, or some sort of passivity or total hopelessness. Of course, I'm not ignoring the reaction, the wonderful reaction of so many young people and so many peoples of the world who are demonstrating continuously against what's happening. But at the level of decision makers, especially in the West, what you see is insistence to be ignorant, insistence to close their eyes from the reality of what's happening, mainly because they don't want to be responsible. And whenever they blame Palestinians, whether about what happened on the 7th of October or about the lack of Palestinian unity or whatever, it's all about one thing: running away from taking the responsibility of fulfilling the duty they have in their positions about protecting international law and protecting international humanitarian law. In reality, I must conclude, there is no international humanitarian law anymore. It's over. It's finished. What happened in Gaza destroyed so many things for the whole world, and in particular, the absence of international humanitarian law. And this cannot be fixed without immediate actions to impose sanctions on Israel, without immediate actions to stop the atrocity that Israel is doing. Will Trump administration do that? I doubt it, of course, completely.
Okay, speaking solution. I don't want to focus on what's not being done, but what can be done, especially given how dire the situation in northern Gaza is. And especially when we're seeing the annexations and the spillover effect into the West Bank and the spillover effect in Lebanon and the same criminal activity in Lebanon. And for people to understand that you're next if you're setting this precedence. There's no ally for an entity such as Israel. So what can we do on a grassroots level?
First of all, my call to the younger generation of the world, and especially students worldwide, and especially people in the United States of America, don't don't stop acting. Don't stop demonstrating for Gaza. Don't stop demonstrating to stop this genocide. What we have seen is that since we had summer holidays, a decline in the number of solidarity activities that are happening, and some sort of numbness, where people became numb to what's happening in Gaza. That should not happen. The first thing we should do is to reactivate the popular reaction, to activate the popular demonstrations, the popular protests against what's happening there. That's how politicians here, if they see the people in the streets, if they see the people, the students in universities, regardless of how much they were oppressed by many administrations in many universities, reactivating the action in the street, the popular action is the first thing that we need. Second, I think what we need is to call for total military embargo on Israel. And so many governments of the world must be demanded to establish immediate embargo, military embargo on Israel. Third, we need more sanctions. We need more divestments. I've been meeting with the people in the Parliament of Norway. I've just finished the meeting with the ministers there. What we need, for instance, from them is to divest. They did divest from some companies that like Elbit, but up till now, for instance, they have $2.2 billion of oil of investment of the fund of the generation fund or future fund, as they call it in Norway, which is one of the largest in the world, the second largest actually in the world, to divest completely from all companies that are classified, and there are 50 companies in which these $2.2 billion are used, invested in, and these companies are classified by UN as violators of international law. So I think divestment, I think sanctions, I think boycott, these are the instruments that people have and they can exercise, and they should do it immediately. By the way, Israel itself is in trouble, and Netanyahu cannot continue this war because he has three factors that are pressuring him. First, losses that he has in the field, the human losses on the side of the Israeli army, etc. Second, a huge economic crisis. Israel is in deep economic crisis now. So some more in the divestment, some more sanctions will definitely affect them. And finally, they are very sensitive and becoming even more sensitive to losses at the moral side worldwide. And that's why I say reactivating the demonstrations can be effective. I'm not, I don't want to sit down and complain or feel sorry for ourselves. That's not what we need. We need to be more active, to exercise more pressure. I'm not pessimistic. I'm optimistic about the future. But what we need is immediate movement, immediate pressure, because what is at stake here is the lives of thousands and thousands of children and women and innocent people.
How dire is the situation in northern Gaza?
Very dire. You're talking about 32 days of total siege. You're talking about people starving. You're talking about children who don't have milk, who don't have food. You're talking about lack of medications. As I said, all hospitals are besieged. If somebody gets injured, they will simply die because nobody can provide any kind of medical treatment to them. And this has been going on for 32 days, and it goes on. And that's why it is really terrible. And then many people are pushed out. And these are heroes. People in Gaza are heroes because they refuse to be displaced into the south, as Netanyahu is trying to push them to do, because they want to stick to their place, to their homes, to their cities. And so they move from one neighborhood to another, and then from another neighborhood to another, and then back to the first neighborhood, because they try to stay on their land, because they understand if they leave the north of Gaza, they will never be allowed back, and Israel will immediately start building settlements there. So it's about survival, and not only survival of people's lives, but it's about survival of a nation, survival of the future of our country.
Sir, I can't thank you enough. I know you have other interviews, so I leave it at that. But if you have any final words you want to say before we end this live, please go ahead.
My call on you and all the younger generation of this world, don't go into despair, don't lose hope, but please be active. Reactivate what you do as much as you can. We need you. We need that. You can join us in this wonderful struggle, and one day we will be victorious, and the world will write histories about the heroism of the Palestinian people and their steadfastness, and how much we stood up to this most modern fascism that is exceeding even the crimes of the fascists that did so many horrible things during the Second World War, including against Jewish people. And as I said in a recent talk here, I said, what's the difference between Anna Frank and a Palestinian little child, Hind Rajab, who was stuck in a car with 6 of her family members killed, and for 2 hours calling for help, and all of that was recorded and broadcasted. And when finally an ambulance managed to get close to her, the Israeli tanks bombarded the ambulance and then bombarded the car and killed Hind Rajab. For me, there is no difference between Anna Frank, who was killed by the Gestapo, the fascists, the Nazi Germans in the Second World War, and she was a Jewish girl, and Hind Rajab, who was a Palestinian girl, killed by the same kind of criminals. That's the idea. I think people should understand that what we are talking about is the future of humanity. It doesn't matter whether that victim is a Palestinian, a Spanish person, a person in Afghanistan or anywhere else. Humanity must be preserved, and our civilization as human beings is now at threat with the killing of this humanitarian law. Something has to be done to save the future for all of us, for all of our children, for all of our families. That's the call, and I ask you to be as active as you can, and I thank you, Rahma, for everything you are doing.